Okay, so this is the last of the 8 series in the SMS webinars, and this is where we tie it all together, where we go through the alternative compliance accreditation for fatigue and mass, the general safety accreditation with the maintenance assurance program, how that all ties in with the SMS, and then we'll go through the PSOE. We have deactivated the chat. We are just keeping it to the Q&As. We find that's easier to manage. So please, we've got Holly, Nick, Sheridan and Ross and myself, Lisa, from the safety assurance team in the room. They're all on board to answer any questions that come in. So it's the same format as other weeks. I just request that you keep yourselves on mute. We will mute people as we, if people get off mute. But anyway, let's get this underway. All right, so the heavy vehicle accreditation scheme now uses a tiered accreditation model that allows operators to progress to alternative forms of accreditation. So tier 1 is the general safety accreditation. We're calling this the GSA. This is a foundational level. It requires an operator to have an SMS that complies with part 2 of the SMS standard, covering the 5 components we've already covered: leadership and commitment, risk management, people, assurance monitoring and improvement, safety systems. So the GSA applies to all accredited operators. Tier 2 is the alternative compliance accreditation and maintenance assurance program. So there are 3 pathways, the first being the ACA fatigue, which allows operators to tailor work and rest hours to meet the needs of their business. And in return, operators need to demonstrate robust safety systems for managing driver fatigue risks. Then there's the GSA maintenance assurance program, or the GSA MAP, which provides additional assurance in relation to vehicle maintenance and safety. In eligible jurisdictions, New South Wales and Queensland, this provides exemptions from the annual inspections that form part of the registration process. And then there's the ACA MAS, which allows access to certain notices and permit schemes, including for higher mass levels and performance-based standards. So operators must first obtain the general safety accreditation before pursuing the higher second-tier accreditations. However, operators are allowed to apply for GSA and the ACAs and the GSA MAP simultaneously. So the higher level accreditations are to be integrated into the SMS framework and not to be evaluated independently. And we'll go through that in this presentation. So during accreditation audits and assessments, all components are reviewed collectively to ensure an embedded and effective safety management approach. So with the GSA, this is what we've gone through. So it requires the SMS that complies with part 2 of the SMS standard, all 5 components, and addresses all public risks associated. Can we just put, oh, we've got an echo, do we? No, we're good? Okay. This is foundational for all tier 2 accreditations. It applies proportionately. The SMS must be fit for the operator's size, nature, and risk profile. And the assessment is outcomes focused and proportionate to the operator's size, nature, complexity, and risk profile. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. We've just done 6 or 7 weeks on that. So we'll just get on to the ACA fatigue. All right, so this ACA fatigue brings a genuine risk management approach to managing heavy vehicle driver fatigue. Having ACA fatigue allows operators to tailor work and rest hours to meet the needs of their business in return for operators demonstrating greater robust safety systems for managing drivers' fatigue risks. The requirements for ACA fatigue are detailed in Schedule 1 of the Safety Management System Standard. So if you haven't had an opportunity to look at that yet, it's broken down into the first part, which is the SMS component, and it goes through those 5 SMS components. And then there's 3 schedules that sit underneath that. And the first one is for the fatigue accreditation requirements. And those requirements are the orange boxes there, where responsibility and accountability, which fits into the first, we'll actually go through this in another slide, but responsibility and accountability really fits into that leadership component in the SMS. Then you've got your controls. So you've got scheduling and rostering, operating limits controls, technology-enabled controls, fitness for duty, health and wellbeing controls, workplace and vehicle conditions, training and competence, review and continuous improvement, and evidence. So I'm not going to go into those in detail. They are in the SMS standard. So Operators with ACA fatigue will perform a risk assessment of work and rest hours using the risk classification system matrix, or use templated alternative compliance hours developed by the NHVR, which have undergone a risk assessment using the risk classification system matrix, or the RCSM. A copy of the RCSM is available in the Ministerial Standard for Alternative Compliance Hours, which contains further information about using the matrix and the principles that underpin it. You'll also need to select work and rest hours that suit your operations within the legislative outer limits. For solo drivers, this is a maximum work time of 15.5 hours in a 24-hour period and a minimum of rest time of 7 hours in a 24-hour period. For two-up driving arrangements, this is a maximum work time of 14 hours in a 24-hour period and a minimum rest time of 5 hours in a 24-hour period. The requirements for the ACA fatigue are outlined in the Ministerial Standard for Alternative Compliance Hours, so you do need to look at both of those documents for fatigue. Drivers operating with the ACA fatigue are also required to undertake periodic physical medical examination assessments to ensure they are fit to drive. Drivers need to visit their doctor for physical medical examination assessments that complies with the assessing fitness to drive standards produced by Austroads and the National Transport Commission, which are currently under review. With regards to driver training, drivers operating under ACA fatigue are now required to undertake training TLIF 0030, which is Apply Fatigue Risk Management System, and schedulers who schedule roster drivers under the ACA fatigue, or managers who supervise drivers and schedulers, are required to undertake training under TLIF 0031, administer a fatigue risk assessment. Risk management system. Now, those courses aren't yet ready. There is going to be a 12-month teach-out period to transition from 0005 to 0006 to the new components. So they're still going to be delivering 0005 and 0006 until those new units come on board. And drivers, schedules and managers who have previously completed one of the recognised units, such as 0005 and 0006, don't have to resit the new units. Though we do encourage learning refreshers, but we'll continue to recognise completion of the older units of competency. All right, the next one is the GSA MAP, so the Maintenance Assurance Program. This provides additional assurance in relation to vehicle maintenance and safety in applicable jurisdictions, which is Queensland and New South Wales. So operators with GSA Maintenance Assurance Program are eligible for the exemptions from the annual inspections that form part of the registration process. The requirements for GSA MAP are detailed in Schedule 2 of the Safety Management System Standard, and it's titled the Maintenance Accreditation Requirements. So those requirements are, again, responsibility and accountability, similar to fatigue. And then you've got your controls, so daily check controls, fault and recording and reporting controls, fault repair controls, maintenance schedules and method controls. And then similar to fatigue, you've got training and competence, review and continuous improvement, and evidence. GSA MAP is also a requirement for some performance-based standard combinations. So operators will need to check their vehicle approval to confirm if GSA MAP is required. Okay, and now the last one is the ACA MAS. So this provides additional assurance that responsibilities and activities in relation to MAS, loading and operation, are being effectively managed. MAS is a requirement for certain notices and permit schemes, including higher MAS limits and some PVS combinations. There is a list of notices and permit-based schemes that require alternative accreditation MAS on our website. So with the requirements, they're listed up here. And again, the same as fatigue and maintenance, you've got responsibility and accountability, training and competence, review and continuous improvement, and evidence. And then for the controls, it's vehicle identification and capability controls, vehicle use controls, suspension maintenance controls, and verification controls. Now, the next slide, we're not reading it word for word, but we want to give you an example of the difference between the prescriptive nature of business rules and standards to the safety outcomes focus of the SMS standard. So the SMS standard allows you to tailor your procedures, your documents, your system to ensure that it suits your operational requirements, the size, the scalability, and the complexity of your business. And I've just grabbed the daily check as an example. You can see there in the business rules and standards section 2 for the daily check, how we stipulate every single thing that needs to be covered in the daily check. Instead, in the SMS standard, it outlines that you must have a daily check in place for each vehicle, that there's a timing, responsibility, and method of recording the daily check that are defined and consistently applied, and that the scope of the daily check addresses safety critical components to a degree sufficient to identify obvious defects before use. So we're not detailing the exact components. We would expect your pre-start to suit the needs of your vehicle, your fleet, your load. How does this all embed? Now, this is quite a busy slide, so we'll just take a little bit of time to go through it. What you've got on the first column is the SMS component, where these are the 5 components: the leadership and commitment, risk management, people, assurance monitoring and improvement, and the safety system. So these are the components that we've gone through in these webinars. Then the next section, which is the general safety accreditation. So this is the GSA accreditation, the first tier. And in that is the SMS, where you've got to outline responsibilities and accountabilities, procedures, resources, culture. In risk management, it's the hazards, the risk assessment, the controls, the incident management, and the ongoing risk management. For people, it's the fitness to drive, the training and communication. Assurance monitoring improvement is the monitoring of the effectiveness, reviewing performance, looking at incident outcomes and embedding them back into your business, the improvements that fall out of that, retaining evidence in the regular improvement. And then the safety systems is that information flows, document controls, record management, and the integration with the operational process. So that's the GSA, the first level, the SMS. Now, if we look at fatigue first, and how does this integrate into your GSA? Well, first, you've got your fatigue responsibility. So that was the first part in, we just go back, the responsibility and accountability. That fits into the leadership and commitment. So when you're writing out your responsibilities, you might have a table, for example, of accountabilities and responsibilities. We would expect to see those fatigue accreditation responsibilities built into that. Not as necessarily, well, you might have a separate document, but it's not a separate system. Then you'll have all the procedures and tools and systems for scheduling and rostering, looking at operating limits and fitness for duty, and the technology and the health and the workplace conditions. They all fit into the leadership commitment. Then for the risk management, you've got to demonstrate how you've got those controls in place to manage those risks for fatigue, for the accreditation. So that's scheduling and rostering, the technology, the fitness for duty and health, training, incident management, workplace vehicle condition. They're all the controls that you have to manage the extra, the risks associated with working outside of standard hours for fatigue. For training, you've got the TLIF 0030 and TLIF 0031. So the manager of the fatigues. So that would be built into your training component under people. Then for assurance, you'll be looking at your fatigue data, reviewing and analysing that information. If there's an investigation that involves fatigue, what are the outcomes of those, and where can you make improvements to ensure that that incident doesn't happen again? You've also got your quarterly compliance statements and your annual review and the records to demonstrate that you are have all these systems in place. And then for the safety systems, it's just using and expanding on those existing systems. For example, rostering and scheduling. If a driver, if a schedule changes, is that scheduler advising the driver, and is that correlate, that conversation happening? So that's the safety system component. So all of these become embedded in your safety system. And we do have the audit tool. We'll take you through the audit tool to show how auditors will assess this as well. The same goes for maintenance and mass, where you've got the maintenance and the mass responsibilities. How are they detailed in your leadership and commitment under responsibilities? Then you'll have all the procedures, the tools and the systems that support the accreditation components for that. Under risk management for maintenance and mass, you've got those controls in place to manage the extra concessions, the risks associated with those concessions that you get for accreditation. For people, we would expect to see maintenance training built into your training, and mass as well, training and qualifications built into your people component. And the same goes for assurance monitoring and improvement, as it did for fatigue, with the maintenance and mass compliance and monitoring. If there's an incident, how are you building in the learnings from that incident to prevent a reoccurrence. And then again, the safety systems, how if a pre-start, if a driver reports a fault, how is that getting communicated to operations? How is that vehicle getting taken out, fixed? And how's that whole system working? So this is how it becomes embedded into one system. Currently, you would, in the current system, it's very modular based. It's maintenance, fatigue, and mass. And you might have a separate manual for each one, and they're each assessed on their own merit without any integration with the other two components. So this is an embedded system. It's not looking at each one separately. And that's also the same if you already have an existing SMS. We're not expecting you to create a separate SMS. It will be building on your current SMS or just doing a gap assessment on your current SMS to see if there's any gaps in relation to this that you need to just to improve on to make sure that you're meeting the requirements under the SMS standard. So you're not having two SMSs, so one SMS that works to fit the SMS standard. And how do we assess this? We are evaluating compliance to the SMS standard using the PSOE method. This is an evaluation method that assesses whether operators have systems that are present, suitable, operating, and effective. This reflects a broader regulatory shift towards demonstrating safety performance, not just compliance with prescribed requirements. It looks beyond whether documents exist and focuses on whether the system is fit for purpose and delivering the outcomes it is designed to achieve. By assessing each criteria as present, suitable, operating, effective, PSOE provides a practical and consistent way to evaluate performance. It supports a more meaningful view of assurance by helping identify whether systems are established, proportionate to the operation, embedded in everyday activities, and producing intended safety outcomes. So if we start off with present first, present means that all modules all components of the SMS standard are established and documented. In an audit context, this is confirmed by reviewing documentary evidence that the policy exists, the procedure is documented, the risk register has been created as examples. Present is the easiest dimension to confirm. However, it is the weakest form of compliance evidence on its own because it doesn't mean that it's actually doing anything. It could be just sitting on a shelf, which means it's ineffective, although it's present. The next one is suitable. Suitable means the modules align with the nature, size, and complexity of the organization. This is looking at, does the risk register cover the hazards relevant to this operation? Sorry, didn't change it. Change slides? I've got it in. Okay, got that one in twice. Sorry about that. Does the fatigue management procedure reflect the actual operating hours and routes? Does the training procedure account for the vehicle types in use? The next one is operating. Operating means that the processes are actively implemented and functioning as intended. A procedure that exists and is suitable for operation is operating when drivers can describe how they apply it, when supervisors can demonstrate how they monitor compliance, and when records show the process is generating outputs over time. And then the last one is effective. This means that the system consistently achieves the desired outcomes. This requires performance data, trends analysis, and evidence that the SMS is having a positive safety impact, not that it's just running. For example, declining near-miss rates after control was implemented, corrective actions that have actually prevented a reoccurrence, or a risk register that is being updated in response to what monitoring reveals. Effectiveness is of evidence over time, not at a single point. So as an example, I'm going to use maintenance and pre-starts, continue that as an example. So for present, for a pre-start, we would look to see if you've got a pre-start tool and a pre-start procedure in place. That means it is present. You've got the tool and the procedure in place, which is great. Suitable. Those tools and procedures need to match the fleet type, load, and your business operation. So if you've got a pre-start that is for cement agitator, yet you're working for livestock, that may not be a suitable pre-start for your operations. If it is suitable, then we look to see if it's operating. So drivers are using the tool, drivers understand the procedure. Now, if you've got a document, a procedure and a tool that is present and suitable, but drivers aren't using it, then it's not operating it. If they are using it, then it's operating. But then we move on to effective. So this is faults are being reported and promptly rectified by the operator, and inadequate driver inspection practices have been identified and corrected. So you've now got a pre-start and procedure that has been deemed present, is suitable to your operations. Your drivers are using it, so it's operating. But if drivers are reporting faults and the operator is doing nothing with those faults, then it's not effective. If drivers are doing tick and flicks and the operator isn't doing anything to correct that behavior, then it's not effective. But if drivers are using it, they're reporting faults, the operator is identifying those faults and then doing something about them and getting the vehicle repaired, or if the operator is identifying where drivers aren't completing the pre-start correctly and then implementing training or having a chat to them to correct that behavior, then that demonstrates an effective system. So that's just an example of how the whole thing needs to integrate from present, suitable, operating, and effective. So applying this to audits, the audit type is no different to an HVAS in the type of audit. So we've got an entry audit, an initial compliance audit, and then the compliance audit. At the entry audit, we're looking for present and suitable. And then at the initial compliance audit, we're looking to see if it's operating and effective as well as present and suitable. There is a desktop, you can request a desktop review for an entry audit. And if an entry audit is accepted, then it can only be assessed as present and suitable. If you do a site-based inspection entry audit and the auditor assesses your system as present, suitable, operating, and effective, then you can apply to have your initial compliance audit waived. So that's as well as you must have 6 months worth of evidence to demonstrate that your system is effective. So if you've already got an SMS in place, or if you start building it and your accreditation expires in 2 years and you start building your SMS, you could have 6 months worth of evidence at that entry audit of an effective SMS, which means that you can apply to have that initial compliance audit waived. All right. So we do have a guideline. I'll just see if an operator guideline, which just pulling it up. There we go. This operator guideline details everything we've just gone through in more detail. We do have a slide at the end as well that's got the links to all of this. So this guideline runs through the SMS, each of the alternative compliance accreditations and the MAP, and provides more detail on what is required and how to apply for accreditation. It's a really useful document. I recommend that you have a look at this if you haven't already had a look at it. Are we able to put the link for this one in the chat? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you. All right. So recommend you reach out to it. It's really useful. It's got lots of information in there. All right. So the last piece is the audit tool. Just bear with me while I bring this one up. Okay, so the audit tool is available on the website already. We've touched on it slightly. It's got this operator profile, which you can fill out with the operator to determine what profile you sit in. Remember, we did move away from the size because we found that after talking with industry and auditors that it's a little bit more complex than just basing it based on the name of, like an operator complexity based on the number of vehicles. So there are a series of questions in here around operational scale, organizational structure, system implementation, and administrative capacity that determine the profile. So your operator profile 1 is your very basic, it's small operation, I guess, and operator 2 is your medium-sized, and operator 3 is the more complex. So depending on what is selected up here in the operator profile will populate the evidence that an auditor may look for in the actual matrix. So currently under NHVS, there's 2 separate reports that the audit completes. One is the audit matrix, and then the next is the audit summary report. We've combined these 2 documents together, and the C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 tabs. These are now the matrices that form the audit report, and then it will self-populate in the summary here. So at the end of the summary, you'll be able to see how effective your system is and how conforming your system is as well. And any cars will populate in here. So at the end, you can have that easy discussion and easily identify any areas that need attention. You can also select up here which accreditation component you're in, and this is important because it was, as we mentioned, that you are assessed, well, this SMS is assessed together, not as separate components. So looking at this is the leadership and commitment matrix. So this is the GSA. I'll just make this larger. Sorry, it's probably a bit small. All right, so this is the GSA component up here where we look at responsibility and accountability. And then because we selected fatigue, you'll see that fatigue has shown up here as well. And then it goes into development, implementation, resource allocation, and safety culture. So when we're looking at, so the other components of this is the actual, the SMS criteria, this is the audit criteria, and then we've provided guidance on what might demonstrate what is present and suitable, and what evidence might demonstrate that your system is operating and effective. So this is just guidance material. And then I'll just go to the matrix. This is the same information, but it's just on the one spreadsheet for your reference. I'm just doing this so I can compare what we would look for an operator profile 1. So for leadership and responsibility and accountability, sorry. Some things that we would look for present and suitable is, for example, a simple SMS manual that outlines everything, a safety commitment statement policy, documented roles and responsibilities, or an owner-operator statement for safety, vehicle maintenance, fatigue, loading, unloading. So these are just some examples, very, very simple, structured. If you do have a specialized load, for example, dangerous goods or oversize, overmass, then we would expect to see these higher risk activities actually incorporated into SMS. So these are the higher risk activities are irrespective of the size of your operations. We would expect to see you address that because that's a risk of your business. So we've included little triggers here to just remind you that you will need to have something for your high risk activities if you have those. If you're just generic, you can ignore that. If we move on to the operator 3 profile, in what we would look for present and suitable, we would expect to see a governance framework or an organizational structure outlining safety positions, those executive safety accountabilities built into the organizational structure. On the website, there would be board and executive or leadership commitments, the reporting arrangements, the delegation of authority. So you can see there's a lot more evidence or more complex evidence we would expect to see that larger scale operation than what we would for a smaller operator. And that's where filling out this profile and determining what profile you have will populate this evidence in this section here. And then the next one is the risk matrix. Okay, so this is where you're looking at the hazards relating to your business. You're assessing the risks that are linked to those hazards. You've got controls in place for those hazards. You've got a process in place to manage incidents. You're looking at risk on an ongoing basis. It's not just a once-off. Then if you've got like an alternative compliance accreditation selected, so that in our case, this is fatigue, this is where we'd expect to see these controls in place in your risk management. So scheduling and rostering, operating limits, technology-enabled controls, fitness for duty, health and wellbeing, and workplace vehicle conditions. So that's how we expect to see that embedded. The next one is people. All right, so you got fitness to drive. So that's across everything now. Training and competency. And then again, because there's that training competency component for fatigue accreditation, that's where we've built in the TLIF 0030 and 31. Then there's evidence and communication. Oh, sorry, it's communication. Evidence is in the next one. So the next one is assurance monitoring and assessment. So this is looking at performance indicators, monitoring and reviewing the continuous improvement. And then because, if you remember back to that slide, fatigue, or all of them had the continuous improvement piece. So this is the quarterly compliance statement that you already got in place. How you're reviewing documents. If there's an incident, how's that being embedded back into your improvement? And then there's the evidence piece as well. So this is the GSA component. And then for the fatigue component, the evidence that you're reviewing the work diary, that you've got the training records up to date, that sort of evidence. And then finally is the systems integration piece. So this is, how is your system operating? Is the system coordinated? Is there an integration with operations? There's no ACA or GSA map on this tab. Instead, we would be looking to see how it all integrates. So for the first one, if there's an incident, is there an investigation? Is the corrective action linked back into the risk assessment? And is training being updated? For system coordination, this is all about the people coming together. So as I mentioned before, is the driver talking to the scheduler, who's talking to the supervisor, talking to the manager. For maintenance, if there's a fault identified, are the driver talking to the maintenance, talking to the operations, or however the information flows? That safety information needs to flow correctly so that the right people are getting the information at the right time to make those safety decisions. And then finally is the integration with operations. So does this SMS work day to day? So this is where we would interview drivers to see if they're following procedures, or there's evidence that drivers are following procedures, that risks are influencing schedules. If there's a fault reported with a vehicle, that it's triggering some sort of action. And what the auditors would do, this essentially becomes the summary of your system. So how effective is your system as a whole? So at the end, you'll see how conforming you are, how effective your system is, and then you'll get the summary down here on how effective your overall system is. The auditors then upload this report to the NHVR portal, and then they'll enter the cars into the NHVR portal, and then you'll be able to work with the auditor to close out those cars through the portal. In addition to that, once the auditors are happy that you've closed out those cars. So for major cars, the audit report cannot be submitted with any open major cars. They need to be closed out. But once you're happy with the audit report, then it's on to the operator then to submit it to an HVR. So it's all managed through the portal now once the actual audit has taken place. And have I missed anything with the audit report? Right, so that's it with the audit report. If I go back to the presentation, oops, sorry, that's the link to the audit report. Okay, so we have included the links in this presentation as well. So when we send out this presentation, you'll have the links to all of this information. So broken it down into the SMS, all the key links that we've been sharing with you. Also the ones for heavy vehicle accreditation scheme. We've got those links for audits and also the link for the risk management. And I've been advised that the risk management tool will be online from Monday. So depending on when we send this out, we'll get that link updated. But that's it. That is it for this presentation. So I'll stop now for questions. We got.
There's one there from Joshua. Is there any accredited mass-related training, or will there be?
No, not like for fatigue. It's up to you to determine what your training requirements are for your business.
There are external providers that will be giving or currently give mass-related training. You could probably Google that or search that and find one of those providers, but the regulator isn't or hasn't created any. Sorry.
And there's one from Bruce. Does the Fit for Work Commercial Medicals NTC AFTD standards apply to all HV over 4.5 tonne Currently, it only applies to fatigue-related HV over 12 tonne and operating under a fatigue accreditation.
It's related to fatigue regulated heavy vehicles, which has changed the definition. It's now in the regulations, which is still 12 tonne, I believe. But yeah, anything over 4.5 tonne is not deemed a fatigue regulated heavy vehicle, as per the definition. So no, the fatigue training is not required.
There's one from Temi. Will we be able to use that auditor matrix ourselves while we build our system?
Absolutely. We are encouraging you to use that as a way to do an assessment against the current system, but also as your internal review, your 12-month internal review. It's available there for you. Use it, please. It is, I just want to put a little caveat on there. We are slightly improving the functionality of it, so we will be improving the functionality of it over time. But yeah, please use it.
Can I just put a comment in there? The updated laws and regulations are now on our website.
Oh, yes.
As from the 1st of August. And I'm just looking at the fatigue regulations for the definition of a fatigue regulated heavy vehicle. I'm just trying to find it. Find it on the, but I'll let you know.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you to everyone for coming along to these. I hope they were able to provide you with some information to support you with your safety management system. Please don't be scared by it. It's a great initiative. It doesn't have to be complex. Please start working on it now, and then by the time your accreditation ends, is due to expire, then you'll be all set up, ready to go. I just had another question. Is the entry audit a self-audit, or do we need to engage an auditor to do this? No, it does need to be conducted by an approved NHVR auditor. The list of NHVR auditors that are approved to do the HVA audits are up on our website. So the link to that is in this presentation as well. But thank you to everyone. We really appreciate it. Sorry, Sally, just reading your question there. That's for accreditation. So if you're currently under you don't need to change anything you're doing whilst you're under NHVAS fatigue accreditation. It's when you transition across to the new system and you do that RCMS and you get your template, that's when you do the transition.